In the desert oasis where stories ignite, Skip's little bar, a beacon of light. From the Coachella Valley stars to cool everyday Joes, join Patrick and Randy, let the stories flow. At Big Conversations Little Bar, the magic spreads near and far. Backed by the McCallum Theater's grace, celebrate the voices that shape this place.
From the coveted corner booth in a little bar at the center of the Coachella Valley universe, welcome to another Big Conversation with Patrick Evans and Randy Florence, presented by the McCallum Theater. Visit McCallumTheater.org or reach the box office at 760-340-2787. Gentlemen.
Thank you, Howard, very much. Yes, we are back here at the treasured, iconic corner booth of Skip Paige's Little Bar. I'm Patrick Evans, and you're listening to Big Conversations Little Bar. I'm joined as him each week by my faithful, stalwart, trusty, makes it sound like a horse, but you're our sidekick, co-host, and companion, Randy Florence.
I'm glad to be here.
Our thanks to the McCallum Theater, our presenting sponsor. The season is in full swing. They're adding shows. They've got some incredible shows coming up. Notably, the theater's dark on March the 18th.
The one day we could make it.
The one day we wanted to go. It's like, what's playing, Randy's? Nothing. We got nothing. No, they got an incredible brass orchestra, all-female brass orchestra coming up.
Ooh.
Yeah, I'd love to see that. They've got, Bob Anderson, who does the most perfect Sinatra. He's unbelievable. He wears prosthetics. He looks the part. He sounds the part. I saw him a couple years ago. We've had him on Eye on the Desert. He's terrific. He's coming up. There are all these great shows. You can go to McCallumTheater.org to find out more, and we'll hear from them again a little bit later on in the broadcast. Randy, why don't you have known this gentleman long enough you've insulted him 4 times before we had started, so you know him a long time.
That's how long we've known each other. And before you guys got here, he had gotten even with me. So.
Oh, okay.
But I'm old enough to be known as uninsultable, so say what you like.
Oh, there you go.
We're going to give it a shot.
I aspire to get there one day, Dave.
Dave Nicholas is with us. Dave is a good friend of mine, so laying that out there. Be nice to me.
I shall.
Okay.
I'm always nice.
Don't start the interview by begging for mercy.
I have to. I know him. So Dave is actually going to be one of our first guests who had multiple careers and still is busy with one of them. So let's start from the very beginning in Binghamton, New York.
Yeah, why do you think you're on the podcast today? That's the question I have for you.
Well, I'm in 3 different halls of fame. I am a member of the Road Racing Drivers Club of America, the most elite club. It's one of those things that you can't join. You must be nominated and vested. And I'm filthy rich.
This morning he sold a Ferrari.
I did.
Now I have to ask a follow-up question. Are those 2 different things? Are you filthy and also rich, or just filthy rich?
I was wondering. I know you told me Patrick was dumb. He's not. He figured it out.
I don't think that's the word I use.
I'm filthy.
That's a word a lot of people use. It's okay.
Old Binghamton, New York. Upstate New York. As you well know, I can be a little on the crazy side from time to time, or
all the time.
And I blame it on a couple of things. First of all, it happened. It started out in school. I'm born on January 1st, so I'm a New Year's baby, right?
Okay.
And my father's name is Nicholas. We're Lebanese descent, and the son is always named. His first name is the name of the grandfather's middle name. So Alexander Nicholas Orizik, and my father, instead of being Joseph Nicholas or something, he became Nicholas. It's just family tradition. So then I would go to school. I'm in 4th grade, and the teacher says, okay, who's the wise guy that says that if not 1-1, what's your real date of birth? I said, January 1st. And what is this? Your father's name is Nicholas. Nobody has to. And that's what made me like this.
It drove you crazy?
Reputation at an early age.
For years. No, your New Year's Day is not your birthday, and your father can't be Nicholas.
So what birthday was it? Was it 75 that you did the big thing in Vegas?
I did one in 70 and one in 75.
Okay.
We were going to do 80, but that COVID thing popped in the way. Yeah,
That's the excuse we used.
that's it. Yeah, that's exactly
It's
right.
been over for a few years,
Yeah.
but we're still using it.
But Binghamton was a great place to grow up. It was a thriving city.
Big family?
No, just my brother and I, and Uncle Joe, who when he came back from the Navy, moved into the house and never left. Uncle Joe of the double-breasted suits.
Well, Uncle Joe had it right. I mean, just if you found a good gig, stick with it.
Absolutely.
And before we started recording, you were telling us about your love for baseball in New York.
Oh, yeah. Well, and you had the Dodgers, the Giants, and the Yankees. I mean, how could you not be a baseball fan? And the great story is my father hated the Yankees. My father was 5'5", muscular, tough guy. He was an iron worker and machinist. And so he always liked the little guy. So that's why he didn't like the Yankees. So my brother and I, as kids, we had to love the Yankees.
Because Dad did.
Just to get under his
Because
skin.
your father didn't. Exactly. So you have to understand, this is the 40s and 50s when baseball was played when it should be played in the daylight. And so my dad and his brothers would go to their machine shop and they'd listen to the Yankees on the radio.
And everybody had the radios on during the day.
Oh, we had our radios on at night too.
But there weren't many games being played.
No games at night. So if the Yankees lost, my father would stop at Terenzio's Italian Bakery on the way home. We'd have fresh Italian bread for dinner that night. The Yankees were so good, we didn't eat that.
You eat a lot of bread, yeah.
We ate all leftovers.
And sadly, that nice Italian bakery went out of business.
No,
I'm
Patrick. Here's the odd thing.
Dave Bottom.
One of the few things left in Binghamton from those days is Terenzio's in the same place, same building.
Well, it must be
Terenzio's Italian
fantastic
Bakery.
bread.
Yeah.
That's the story. It's got to be great. All right, I want to know when you first fell in love with motorsports.
Boy, did you feed him that?
No, he's that good.
He is good.
I read his shirt. He's a race car driver, so I love it when the guests give me clues.
I'm a race car driver.
1950 and 6, before you were born.
Only by 10 years.
Yes, yeah, 'cause I understand that. So my brother is 6 years older than I. He was working a construction job. This is summer, July, August maybe. And so I'm laying on this a big old East Coast house with a porch and a thing that was known as a glider. It was an outside.
Oh, yeah.
So that would swing. So I'm on the glider doing nothing. 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. My brother comes home sweaty and tired, and he is pissed. He grabs me off that thing and wraps up a magazine, starts beating me with it. And you son of a gun, you're going to have to work. I'm out there saving, you're laying here. Blah, blah. So, and he takes me and he throws me off the porch. It was only 2 steps, so it wasn't bad. Throws me along.
So you guys were close.
And then he throws the magazine at me and storms into the house. I grab the magazine, I open it up, and it's Sports Cars Illustrated. What the heck's this? So I start reading it, and I read about European cars and races called Grand Prix. Wow, what the hell's that? And so I read cover to cover, fell in love with motorsports. A little later that year, 2 months later, in early October, my brother and some of his friends were going to go to this place called Watkins Glen to watch a car race. And I said, I've got to go. Yeah. What college guy wants to take his teenage brother with him? Nobody.
And then 0, yeah.
But I'm the youngest. So I went to my mom. Mom! She made my brother take me. Been all over since.
And you were like 30 at the time.
Yeah, I was just still laying home. No, that's not
much
in
later.
those days.
No.
I still had my paper route then, though.
All right, so your first experience looking at this magazine and seeing the Grand Prix, which are fascinating because there's such different kinds of races, but there's so many different types of motorsports. What made you decide to go the route you did? Was it the car? Was it the style of driving?
It was, pretty much the style of driving. My first introduction was to road racing. And so that's what I was attracted to. Then I went to Watkins Glen, and in those days...
Well, Watkins Glen is a traditional track.
Oh, yes, yeah. It was the first road racing in the United States in 1948. Post-war, I should say, post-war. So for years and years in the 50s and 60s, Ferrari had these gorgeous V12 engines that would just howl. They make the most beautiful mechanical noise. And so in 1956, Watkins Glen is a very fast track. It's long straights. You would hear these Ferrari V12s at 7,500, 8,000 RPM going down that straight. And I mean, it was music. That's pretty much it. When I said, well, stock cars, V8s, they're great cars. Don't get me wrong. I raced V8s for quite a while. Lovely power. But there's nothing like the sound of that. And I like to turn left and right, go fast, slow down, do that kind of stuff.
Right. So good old NASCAR didn't have much appeal because that's just one big left-hand turn.
Well, that's not right. It's a different racing, but believe me, going around in corner. I did a year and a half of NASCAR.
Did you? Okay.
Yeah. 1974, or 73, we'd won a major IMSA championship. If any road racers know what that is, just watch the Daytona 24-hour Sebring. That's IMSA, and I was actually a champion with them in 1973. Again, just slightly after you were born.
Just slightly.
Yeah, and so 1974, the gas crisis came. So my sponsors pretty much dried up, and they said, no, we can't be towing all over the country to try and win another championship. We're going to race locally, and so we bought a NASCAR Modified, which is a beast of a car. I mean, in those days, it was limited to 360 cubic inch V8, pretty big.
Yeah, it's a pretty big engine.
And 2,600 pounds, which meant that our power to weight was greater than the Winston Cup, or what now is the Cup cars. So we were around anything up to a mile. We were faster than Richard Petty was.
Wow.
Because we were a faster car, more power. So I'm telling you, you want a lesson in how to drive in traffic, you need to drive a half mile, 3/4 mile oval. I mean, those guys, you're working all the time. And when you get to a place like Pocono or Talladega or Daytona, you're watching on television, they go by. You believe me, you're in that car, that wind, it'll shock.
It's a very physical sport. A lot of people don't realize that, but it is.
Yeah, well, especially when you look inside the cockpit, as television now shows you. I mean, you've got a seat that your head can't go more than that.
Right.
Because of the influences and the G-forces. We now what's called a Hans device. Everybody remembers Dale Earnhardt was killed when he snapped his neck because he wouldn't wear that device, and he installed his shoulder belts incorrectly. He did it the way he liked it. And
on the surface, nobody thought it was a horrible accident
no,
at the
not
time
at all,
it happened.
not at all. So, I mean, safety has become phenomenal because I've had some crack my ribs a few times. I've had a couple. I mean, you can't race for very long and not
have it. Yeah.
Well, you can if you don't go for the front, but that, I mean.
Then what's the point of racing?
Yeah. Well,
what's the worst accident you were involved in?
Pardon?
What was the worst incident?
In NASCAR, it was a half mile track, and you run side by side for lap after lap. I mean, we're doing with a modified, we could do a half mile in 19 seconds, but with corners, an oval. So I'm not sure what happened, but we went down a straight. Nobody knows whose fault it is because you're inches apart the whole time. Anyway, I got up on the car. When the trailing car hits the tire of a car that's in front, you can see they're going like this. You go up in the air. I went up in the air and hit a cement wall. Thank God I didn't go over it. Right? Hit the wall, spun around, and came to a stop. I was fine. I mean, so I thought. Oh. And so I'm sitting there saying, right, yellow flag comes on. Other cars come by. I can see the guys I know, they're looking. I can see them. They're 30 feet away. I'm saying, what the hell's wrong? Puts the start. Won't start. Engine turns over. Won't start. So this is only seconds later. The ambulance comes up. The guy comes up. Are you okay? Yeah. I said, get the push truck and give me a push. It won't start on its own. Basically what they do is you have big bumpers. They grab you and they push you. You put it in third gear.
Put it in gear and it pops you.
And off you go. He said, no, you get out of the car. I said, no. I'm fine. Just push start. Buddy, you need to get out of the car. Oh, shit. So I unbuckle, put that window net down, get out of the car. There's no rear end left. The rear axle and the fuel tank are about 12 feet away.
Well, that explains why it wouldn't turn over on you.
Yeah, and that's why the guys were looking.
Staring at you, yeah. Now, I don't know how many people this has happened to, but you were banned from Watkins Glen for a year.
How did you know? Did I tell you that when I was drunk one night?
There were a lot you told me, but it wasn't that. Can you tell us that story?
I wasn't banned from Watkins Glen. I had my license suspended.
And why?
Well,
breaking news.
No, this was 1963.
Right.
Only a little bit before.
Little bit. Notice, Randy,
I feel I've got a theme going.
You notice
here.
we never use your birth date as a point of reference.
The cars weren't invented yet.
We
have to carbon date
He's
that.
got that beautiful hair of white.
I know.
Hair.
That's why we
have
call him,
no hair.
We call him the Silver Daddy for that reason.
Yeah. I had a couple of guys that taught me racing, local guys, and they were hard chargers. They were guys that won, and I didn't want to go out there and finish 10th. A lot of people like to go racing because you're going fast, but they won't challenge you. Right? They're content going fast and bringing the car back home in one piece. We were all interested in going up to the front, so I'm. Oh no, it's probably 64, not 63. So you were already born.
Not quite, but it's okay.
So I'm at Watkins Glen is when it happened, and I get behind this guy in a Mercedes 190 SL. I'm in an MGA, which shouldn't be as fast as that car, but he's out there driving. He's having a good time. Nice guy. I have no idea who he is, but I can't get by him. And we get to a straight, he pulls away. We get to the chicane and the corners. I catch him, and I can't quite get by him. So I did what my mentors taught me.
You ran him off the road.
I gave him the chrome horn. So when we get into a corner, you just bump them a little bit, and they go like this, and you get by them. What I didn't understand is the guy driving that was the chief steward of the race.
Oops.
And I still had this. When in those days, you had to have 3 stripes on the back of your car, so everybody else would know you were a novice. After your first race, you took it off. So I still had 2 stripes. I said, "You're a novice." I'm still a wise ass, but I was insufferable then. I mean, I look back at
You're
what I
barely sufferable now.
Yeah, but I know. So I looked at him. I said, "Excuse me, sir, but you were holding me up." He said, I wasn't blocking you. I was just I had more power, and you didn't make a safe pass. I said, "Look, man." I said, "This is racing." I said, "It's a little bit of death every day and a lot of love every night." He said, "Let me see your license." The good news is that it was a 6-month suspension, and it was November. So by springtime, everything was back. I just lucked out.
And did you then have a reputation that you had garnered from being somebody who ran the chief steward off the road?
I don't hit people anymore, but no, I'm serious. I'll get real close to them. And now I'm vintage, and we race vintage cars where we're supposed to, there's no contact, no anything, no dive bombing, which is silly, of course. That's how you pass people. Dive bomb is when you get to the end of the straight and people with their brakes on, you put your brakes on a little later than him and get inside, and you just say, "Where are you going?"
And that's not allowed?
Oh, they frown on it. It has to be done safely. And I do it safely. Just get real close to people, and they get nervous, and they say aloha.
So there's a lot of brinksmanship. It's just who's going to blink while you're driving that car.
Absolutely all of it. If you watch the Daytona 500 this past weekend, with 6 or 7 laps to go, a Penske driver, number 22, is challenging. There's a guy in front of him. They're going along in 2 lanes. I mean, there's 5 or 10 laps left. This is no time to say, "Well, I'm going to wait for my chance." You make your chance.
Yeah.
That's it. And so the 22, by the way, is a reigning champion. He makes a move down. The guy in front covers him. He goes back up, and then he slid a little too wide, and there was an opening. He came for the opening, and he got about to his rear wheel. The other guy came down. Huge crash, took them both out.
Wow.
So do you blame the guy that came down and clipped him, or do you blame the guy that went for an opening that wasn't quite there? It's racing. That's all it is. You see an opening, you go for it.
You feel like you have to. I mean, like, really, if the point is to win, you got to exploit the opening while it's there.
If that was lap 50, he wouldn't have done that.
Right.
But lap 195 out of 200 laps.
You don't have any choice.
Running out of time.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
So you mentioned earlier that you were the member of 3 Hall of Fames.
No, yes, but that's no.
No, it's exactly what we want to talk about. Which ones?
No. Hey,
Does
how
this
you
have
doing?
something to do with like girth or something? Or you don't want to...
Hey, John, can I have a tater tot?
I'm glad
And
today
what
was not the day we decided to start video on this podcast. That's
a good point. So are you a member of any Hall of Fames?
Yes.
Okay.
3.
Three.
Could
He
you
wasn't
mention
kidding.
at least one of them?
The Triathlon Hall of Fame, the Xterra Hall of Fame.
How about racing?
No Hall of Fames, but of some exclusive categories.
So we're going to get back to Xterra in a minute, but I want to stay with the racing. So you, for a while, and maybe you still are, you were the highest rated senior race car driver in the country?
No, well, no, I don't think there is such a title. But
There is now. Congratulations.
Yeah. You've won
You
tater
heard it
tots.
on Big Conversations, Little Bar.
It used to be fun because I was up. 2024 was the first year in decades that I didn't win at least one race. A lot of that had to do with bringing the car to the West Coast.
Was that Honeybee?
No, it was the BMW.
Okay.
The rules on the West Coast are very liberal. And even back in the 60s, California really dictated where sports car racing was going. There was a guy named Lance Raventlow built the Scarabs. There were all kinds of guys out here based from World War II and the Korean War, genius mechanics, fabulous technicians, great engineers, and they just built phenomenal cars. And they brought what's called the Sports Car Club of America to their knees. The SCCA was very East Coast, all very blue blood, all very nose in the air, rich money. Rich people race expensive sports cars. On the West Coast, you were a motor pool guy, right, from the 103rd. But boy, you knew how to fix cars and make them go. And you took an old Buick chassis and you took the nailhead engine and you made it make 350 horsepower and you put great new brakes on it and you went out and you beat Ferraris. Literally.
Yeah?
Yeah. And so the West and the East Coast, oh no, we can't do that. So the West Coast said, you know what, the other thing? We're racing these cars, they cost a lot of money. We should pay money. Sports Car Club of America, totally amateur. They wouldn't spend a nickel. No prize money, just beautiful silver cups.
You get a
which
cup.
I have several. Anybody want to buy some silver? So the West Coast has always been very avant-garde in how they write rules. And so the rules that my car raced by, because the car was always stationed on the East Coast, was what's called the historic vintage rules, which the cars had to be pretty much technically like they were no later than 1975, 76, 70 something. And West Coast, no. So that my BMW had to weigh 2,000 pounds, and I could only have a certain amount of brakes. I could only have the West Coast.
None of those obstacles.
No.
So you could have a lighter car.
Oh no, they have carbon fiber hoods, carbon fiber trunks.
So
and
they're
doors.
shedding pounds and putting technology in that you just couldn't
Exactly.
put in your vehicle.
Yeah. Oops. Was I spinning? No.
I
Yeah. So
just
that
wanted to
Drooling,
close
actually,
and
but it's
say-
okay.
so that I would still do well. I'd finish in the top half of the field with 35 or 40 cars, but I mean I was nowhere near winning. So
That must have been very frustrating, though, because you were used to competing under a very particular set of rules.
well, in 2023, I won the biggest East Coast vintage car, what they call saloon race, there was. So I mean, it was a hell of a fight. It was a good race, but nonetheless, I got in front, stayed there.
What track was that?
At Lime Rock. in Lime Rock Park, Connecticut, and so it was a learning process. All guys out here, all great guys. They spend money on their cars. The cars are terrific. They drive them well. I can stay with them, and then you come out of a corner this close to the guy, and he gets you by 3 car lengths. Nothing you can do. I can at the end of the race, I can generally see them.
What are the limits on horsepower?
None.
So
No.
they can. Wow.
Yeah. My car, I run about 10.5 or 11 to 1 compression. Because back in the day, that was about all you could do without blowing the car up. Some guys went 12.5, and their cars would last 2 races, and they'd have to do a new engine. Now, with all the technology, you can go to 13.5 to 1 compression ratio, which gives you huge power.
Wow.
And they're a little bit lighter. They use aftermarket brakes, which we had to use the brakes that were available back then. The races aren't long, so I don't know if the brakes make a big difference. You're
not using them a lot.
Yeah. You use them a lot, but they aren't that much more efficient. If the race were an hour long or 2 hours long, then it would probably count.
How long are the races normally?
20, 25, 30 minutes. Yeah.
All right. Speaking of 25, 30 minutes, we're about halfway through, and we need to pause for a moment to say thank you to the McCallum Theater, our presenting sponsor. So without further ado, a good word from the folks at the McCallum.
The McCallum Theater's 2024-2025 season is on sale now. The world's top artists, from jazz, pop, classical, and comedy to the best of Broadway, only at the Valley's favorite place for great entertainment. Tickets are on sale now at the McCallum Theater box office, by phone, or online at McCallumTheater.org. Tickets sell quickly, so order yours today. A new, exciting season only at the McCallum. The McCallum Theater's 2024-2025 season is on sale now.
Your entertainment, your theater, your McCallum. It is the McCallum Theater. And again, McCallumTheater.org. We're having a fascinating conversation about Dave Nicholas's racing career. And so tell me about the car that you mentioned. It's a BMW.
Yeah.
And you raced it on the East Coast, so you were conforming to these mid-1970s standards. Now, what have you done to the car since you moved it out here?
Sold it.
It's been a great show. Thank you.
Thank you, folks.
Hey, how about that?
Race Cars do podcast
So tell us about Honeybee.
2011, I said, you know what? I need to get back racing. It's been 20 years or so since my last race. I went into business. It was doing pretty well. After we went broke and then came back up like the phoenix rising. And I said, I've got to get a car. So I started, and I still knew a lot of people. I know a lot of people now. The guys I was young with then, they're old guys like me, and except now they're the boss, right? So, I could call somebody up and get a pass to a race because, hey, remember me? Yeah, you're the crazy bastard that blah, blah, blah. So...
How many people say that to you when they answer the phone?
Too many. So I brought the car out here, and saw how popular. It's called the under 2.5. In those days, it was known as a 2.5 challenge. Both IMSA and the Trans Am ran small sedans as well as the big V8s. The big, Mustang, Camaro, Javelin. Firebirds were over 2.5 liters. The Nissans, Datsuns, BMWs, Alfa Romeos and Volvos were under 2.5 liters. And that particular class out here is really popular. You're drawing 30, 40 car fields.
Wow.
This isn't like racing one guy at a time. This is get out of my way. We're coming through. And so I said, gosh, these cars are so popular. If I'm at the end of my string, really. There's no question I'm on the back nine of my racing career. I'm hoping there's another par 5 left. But so I said, Mel, I'm going to put it up for sale. I contacted a guy in Costa Mesa or Carlsbad, someplace, one of the tawny, Oceanside.
Oceanside, it's where the rich people live.
Towns. And he said, well, I think I've got some people that might be interested in this. So because the car I had was the same car I drove in 1972, 3, and 4 to win all those races in the big championship, it was considered, a very valuable car. I mean, that car was there in the day, and it looked like it. I mean, it was the same paintwork, the same everything. When we found the car in 2018, we rebuilt everything. So anything technical was absolutely changed. But the livery, or what's called the bodywork, was exactly the same as when we left it in 1974. So
where did you leave it in 1974?
Well, the sponsor said, no, we can't race it anymore. So
and that's when you switched
put it
to the
away.
NASCAR.
Yeah, he put it away, yeah. And it was a couple of people grabbed it, and they went autocrossing with it and ruined the beautiful ZF 5-speed transmission. But, the car was there. So because of its provenance, that means it's got some history.
Thank you.
Okay,
I was going to have to Google it, but
I
I
was
don't.
worried
Clue
about
what you're
that.
talking about.
Yo, Adrian, is it you? Holy mackerel. Oh, I'm sorry.
Why do we give him that seat?
You get what you get.
So you got the car back.
So we raced it for a couple of years. We won a championship with it all East Coast. Now I'm West Coast. There is this event called Velocity International. You can only bring a car there that has provenance or has history. So I get invited every year because it's a car that people know. So I went to there, and the car was not handling right. So this was in the springtime. I was driving it, didn't handle right. So I took it back here to Palm Desert. I put it up in the air, and it had a rear sway bar on it, which I didn't know the car had because I back in the day I had it taken off. So I said, that's why it's not handling. So we go up to velocity, and I have it disconnected, and I'm immediately 2 seconds a lap faster than I was with it on because it was very twitchy. It was sliding a lot. So we get to the race, and I start, 15th or 16th out of 30, 40 cars. You go through time trials. And I met a couple of people who came there and were interested in the car. They showed up expecting, it's a nice old guy with a nice old car. Maybe it's something we were interested in, but we don't know what the heck it is. So now my car is handling. I can drive it now. It'll do what I want. When I tell it go here, it goes there. And so I come from there and finish 8th. I mean, I passed 7, 8 cars.
Yeah.
And was actually gaining. I mean, it was 6, 7, 5, 6. We were all right together in a pack. But again, I just couldn't get by them. So the people said, wow, that was fabulous. And they bought it that day. They literally made me an offer I couldn't refuse. Yeah, no, honest. It was more than I expected to get for it. But, I mean, there's, what are there? 5 cars from that era still left that are actually the car that was there? So, I guess
that's what I would have said is 5. I don't know.
6 maybe. 5, 6.
So when you weren't racing, what were you doing?
Well, oh boy.
Well, let's get into this. In the 90s.
This is a 3-hour program?
No. You got 2 minutes.
90s was very different from late 80s. I once got them figured out. The best thing that happened was that in 1988, I had been through a bunch of different businesses. Everything from being a partner in a golf course to selling vacuum cleaners to teaching sculpture, lots of different things. Always made $1, but always stayed close to race cars. So now I've sold almost everything. I sold a house, sold a business, sold everything, and my wife was expecting. And I called a buddy of mine in Honolulu and said, hey, I'm thinking about moving out there because I need a job. I don't know what to do. And he said, I just started a business. Love to have you because my businesses had taken me all over the world, so I knew why. I said, okay, I'm coming. So I wrote him a check, bought into the business, packed everything up. The baby was born. 3 months after he was born, we were on a plane, and we moved to Honolulu. 2 years later, we were flat broke. That business went down the tubes.
What was the business?
It was a video postcard We bought green screen technology, put it into a booth that was 3 feet wide by 4 feet long. You went inside as a tourist, and you picked out what scene you wanted behind you, and you spoke into it. And we made a VHS. You remember those?
Oh, yeah.
Made a VHS. It was a 2-minute time that you could talk and say, "Hi, Mom, look at me. I'm here in front of the surf and wire, or I'm here up on the mountain." And then when you were done, the tape would be kicked out, and you'd get an envelope. Yeah, so all I had to do was put stamp on it and send it home. Not 2 or 3 years later, it became pretty popular. Disney started making so you can make videos wherever you go. But in those days, we built the booths, we paid for the technology, and the videos sold, but in such low numbers, we couldn't make a go of it.
Couldn't move it, yeah.
So my partner at the time was the sales manager at the Hyatt Regency in Waikiki, and the tourism board wanted to make a television show featuring Hawaii. And all the hotels get together, and they created what was called the Waikiki Beach Boys Association. And Hilton, Hyatt, everybody got together, pitched in money to try and promote Honolulu, promote Waikiki, because people had to stay in one of their hotels. So they decided they were going to do a surf life-saving competition. Big waves, everybody knows that. Well, who goes out and saves some guy that's in trouble? Well, they do it in Australia, they do it in New Zealand, they do it in California, they do it in Hawaii. So they invited the 4 heads of the surf life-saving in those 4 areas to come and have a competition. Except they hired a full doper to put it on. Like, yo, man, I'm telling you, and I'm so stoked. The guys are really ready.
And how long were you like that?
No, they told my partner, we're not sure what this guy's doing, but we've committed a lot of money to this. We've got people coming to hotel rooms. We've got a television staff.
And that's the spokesman.
A director. And this is the guy that's putting it on. And so my partner, thank God, said, I know a guy. He's worked golf courses. He put on car races. He's done this. He knows everything. I don't even know how to swim. I mean, I'm not even a good swimmer.
You weren't saving many people.
No, I was. So they had me go down and talk to the guy, and I immediately saw this guy was, a great kid. No problem. I'm not kidding. He was probably 30 or 35 years old, but he's a lifelong stoner. And so I went back and reported and said, look, you're in big trouble here. You're taking over Waikiki Beach for this, and you haven't even talked to the Beach Boys. And if you know Waikiki Beach, there's a clan called the Beach Boys, and they run it. The state does not run Waikiki Beach. And it's passed down from generation to generation. So if you want to rent a canoe or go for an outrigger ride, or you want an umbrella and a beach chair, you talk to one of the Beach Boys. And if anybody comes down there and gives them trouble, you probably don't see him the next day.
This sounds a little bit like Chicago in the 20s.
It is. So I said, he has no permits. This guy hasn't talked to the state. He has no permits to film. He has nothing. They said, oh, Dave, can you help us? I said, yeah, but what are you going to do about this guy? I said, roll over him. Right? We got to get rid of him. So I told him, look, step aside. I'm going to handle all the permits. Yo, man, this is open ocean. It's free to everybody. So I went to one of the head Beach Boys. Didn't know him. Said, look, we're going to have a competition here at Surf Life Saving, and we're going to have some filming going on, and we need your blessing to do this. So we'd love to see that. He said, what's coming? We said, the guys from New Zealand, the guys from Australia, the Californians, which there was this, what was the great show?
Baywatch.
Baywatch was in the heyday of Baywatch. In fact, Mitch and all those guys, they came over.
Yeah.
They were part of the team. In Hawaii, he said, oh, we'd love to do that, but how are you going to take care of this, bro? So we'll be happy to pay you for it. He said, well, I make some money. Guys going out in the boat and such. I said, you shut it down for the hours we need, and I'll pay you 100% of what you've gotten and double it. Right, you got it. I said, besides which, I said, the other thing we probably need to do is we know Hawaii well. It's our Aina. It's in our land. Would you be able to do the blessing for us? The wines have blessings for everything. Randy, you know this.
Yeah.
So we got a genuine kahuna, and they went and did the blessing, and everything went fine. We went to the state, and of course I had the power of the association behind me, and they last minute gave us film permits. And a guy came over from New York that was the director, and the show was going to this thing called the Eastern Sports Network. And the guy had worked for ABC in this something about the wide world of something wide world. So he was a director for this thing called the Wide World of Sports. And
the agony of defeat.
Yeah. And the Eastern Sports Network, of course, is ESPN. Nobody knew it at the time. But for 5 or 6, 7 years, ESPN paid us because it was a great TV show. Beautiful people, strong guys, great gals, competition in the surf. That was it.
And this still around the life-saving?
Oh no, it was all life-saving.
Okay.
Yes, yeah. No, I mean, there were. In the old days, they paddled 20-foot long surf skis. They call them surf skis. They're about this wide, 20 feet long, and they could paddle them through the waves. Crazy. I couldn't even walk through the waves. These guys paddling through them. And paddle boards. And I'm an engineer. I'm a car guy. We make things. And we made buoys that we could put out there and chain them together. And we had a rescue guy, and a rescuer would go out and grab them. Had to go around the buoy and drag them back to shore. We had the typical surf life-saving things. And it became a great TV show. By then I said, well, we have the staff coming in. We're making a TV show when we're doing it for Dave, and we're paying all this money to have people come in. Let's make another event. So I created the Waikiki Kings Race. It turned out that Waikiki itself was only for royalty. You could not go past what finally became the Alawai Canal unless you were invited. So that the Kings would send a runner back across and bring me food, bring me this. So we called it the Kings Race, and it was nuts. I pulled off more permits and paid off more people in Hawaii. But it all morphed eventually into bicycle racing. We had world-class bicycle races. We put on the UCI, the Union Cycliste International World Cup Finals in Honolulu.
Wow.
Well, yeah, it was great stuff. And then one day in 1996, spring of 96, we had just finished the Hawaiian Mountain Tour. And, of course, you had people, spectators, so you had to have parking, you had to have guys doing everything. Not unusual, just a normal organization. My parking lot guy comes and says, hey, boss. You know his boss, that's all. Hey, boss, we got a lot of kind people down here. He said, we got the ocean. We got the mountain bike trails. We got the running trails. Why don't we do one of those Ironman things, but on the mountain bike? Why not? So I had him killed and took the idea.
I miss that guy.
He was such a nice guy. And we created a thing called Xterra.
And where did the name come from?
Well, our first name was Xterra. And again, we did a television show. The athletes loved it. It turns out that in those days, 96, triathlon organizers didn't treat the athletes very well. They said, come on, race, get the hell out of here. So we didn't know any better because we were hospitality people. So we treated them well. We had dinners, we had uniforms, we had tea, we had everything for them. And so it was very popular. We immediately picked up a sponsor. We had a sponsor from Maui. The Xterras were always held on Maui. Maui needed some sports, and they had some funding. We did the TV show. Well, some guy that makes kayaks from South Carolina has his lawyer talk to us. I have the name Xterra trademarked. So he said, well, the hell with that. What's the difference? You're in South Carolina. We're in Hawaii. So we talked to our lawyer. He goes back through. Yep, the guy has a trademark. But he only has a trademark for watercraft. So that, you're putting on an event. You can do it. He said, but I've got to charge you for this. It's going to be a battle. It's going to cost you $10,000. You've had one race. Change the name. So Tom, my partner, came up with the name. Well, let's do Xterra. which was just before the X Games came down. I don't know if we had anything to do with that or not, but Xterra. And in late 97, we get a call from a New York ad agency asking us about the name. We said, well, it's our name. Because he was smart. We trademarked it right away. Or, I'm sorry, copyrighted it. Trademark takes a while to do. We copyrighted it. And for every possible issue, you can do that for 5 years. Then you have to settle on something of what your specific business is. So we kept the name, and the ad agency said, well, what are you going to do with it? This is ours. We're going to do everything with it. We're going to make this and do that. That's our name for all our businesses yet to come. So they come back, in a company, Nissan.
I've heard of it.
Had been having, think tanks, and the name they came up with, and then they did surveys. The one name they wanted for a car was Xterra. Mm-hmm. And, of course, it was the very first of the small SUVs, the Xterra. So they had to buy the name Xterra from us, and part of the deal was that they sponsor us for 10 years.
Wow.
Boom.
Wow.
That gave me the seed money to really blow the event up. We had races in every corner of the U.S. We had a tent city, and we had a 50-foot truck that those days were probably only 46 feet. But and a crew.
But Dave always said it was 50.
Yeah. And that's how it grew. And eventually, the international governing body of triathlon created a niche that we had mountain bike triathlons. They call it cross triathlon. At one point in time, we were in, I think, 18 countries in 1 year.
Wow.
Yeah. And eventually, more than 30 on and off.
And so were you like the advance man going into these countries? And
I was the boss.
So
yes,
you
of course. Excuse me, monsieur. Or John Wayne used to say, Monsieur. Excuse me, Monsieur. You want to have an Xterra in France? Well, I'll need to be there. Oui, Monsieur Nicolas, of course. And so, yes, to ensure that they would put on an excellent event, that they
to uphold the standards that which you had established.
Uphold, exactly. I was there
Because the name Xterra in the races had providence.
Oh,
ooh.
Yes.
Wow,
I don't care what you say. He's okay. This guy.
Yeah.
If he had hair, he'd be better. But
So how many countries?
I do. It's just all on my back.
How many countries has Xterra been in?
Oh, over 30. Yeah.
And I've heard stories. You've shared some of these. You'd go into certain places and there'd be kings or princes or.
Well, not exactly kings. We did have a prince or two, and we had there was a lot of them. I still have some pictures, and especially in places like Malaysia or the Philippines, we're bringing a couple thousand people into a little small town. Mm-hmm. So this is big news to them. So I've got pictures of big posters over the road as you drive the road. Welcome, Dave Nicholas.
And were you the big kahuna by then?
No. I Big Kahuna strictly for surfers. Kahuna itself is a thing.
Right.
You must be educated and pass the other kahunas so that they know that you understand the history of Hawaii,
right,
and who you should be. So I became Kahuna Dave. No Big Kahuna. And I actually am a cup. The Kahuna said that I was knowledgeable enough that I am a Kapuna, which is a step or two below Kahuna.
I didn't know that.
Pretty much means an old guy who knows a lot. Whether what he knows is worth anything or not, it's beside the point.
So tell us, you're in all these different countries. Not everything goes well all the time.
No.
Talk to us about any of the events that you had. I know you had a couple where weather was a major issue.
Yes. Oh, yeah. No, in Lake Tahoe one year, oh, God, we broke a lot of new ground. And it wasn't as difficult as it seemed because people knew us. We'd been putting on good
brand
events
was
for
known,
years.
yeah.
Yeah. The name was known, and contrary to my personality, I'm a pretty organized person. So, I mean, all my T's are crossed and all my I's are dotted. So when we went to ask the state of California for permission to use one of their state parks, which was verboten, no commercial event could ever be held in a California state park. Well, they were hurting. They were closing state parks. They were out of money. So I went to one and presented them a book that was probably a half an inch thick, insurance policies, different governments that we'd worked with all around the world. The guy said, I'm going to take a chance on you. So he went up to whatever level he did, and we got permission. And since then, California state parks are now open to competitive events as long as you comply with the Xterra rules.
Ooh.
That you have to have. So, where's your emergency plan? Where are the doctors? Where's the exits? Where's the insurance? Right? Who's going to provide security? Where's parking? Where you got all those little things that you really need to think about. You can't just like, yo man, I'm really stoked.
Let's throw a race.
Yeah. And so we also got to use some of those fabulous trails above Lake Tahoe, the Flume Trail and the Ridge Trail. And we got up one morning and there was like an inch and a half of snow on the ground. So what are you going to do when you have a race with an inch and a half snow on the ground? Well, you postpone it till 10 o'clock in the morning because it would melt off, and then you postpone the swim because, there's little icebergs floating in the lake.
Oh, my gosh.
We've had big storms. What was it? What year was the tsunami? Iniki. Iniki hit 1992. I think 1992. The one that destroyed Kauai.
Right. Oh, yes.
Yeah. That happened during Ocean Fest week, during our ocean events, and so we had about 20 of the premier surf lifesavers on Earth. Right there.
Wow.
And we covered the beach. It was great. It was great stuff. We held off for maybe a day. Till the storm passed through.
Wow.
Because these guys could swim. They could do anything. I mean, the Eddie Aikau, we provided the lifeguards for that. I mean, they're 40-foot waves.
How many people did you normally have in an event? How many participation?
Oh, it was wildly varied, from 2,000 to 120, anywhere in between. Yeah.
Now, when did you get out of the Xterra business?
When I sold it.
That's a good time to go.
Yeah, kind of like the car.
That's kind of like the car.
Yeah,
But
if you
that
want
was
to get
just a
rid of
few
Nicholas,
years ago.
buy something from him.
That was just a few years ago.
Yeah, 2018.
Yeah.
And that's when I came here full time.
Which is another story.
And that's when you got back into doing a little racing.
No, I went back to racing in 2012.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
When were you back to the racing? You, sometime over the last few years, you raced on the Brickyard.
Yes. I don't know, 2014, 15, something like that.
Make up a number nobody else will know. It's okay.
Yeah, no, exactly. Well, except the only problem, really, is that so many people are going to hear this. They're going to say, that freaking Nicholas is lying. It was 2013.
Well, so far nobody's fact-checked our podcast. Well, McMullen does,
Kay's
but
not
that's
going to
it.
do it. Rosemary's not going to do it.
Yeah, that was they only allowed the vintage cars to do that 1 year because even though we're older guys, many of us raced back in the day. One of the reasons it's easy for me to win vintage races is that rich older guys have wanted to race all their life, but they never did when they were young. Now they've got some money. I'm going to go racing. Well, they aren't going to go racing against 25-year-olds. So they buy a vintage car, they go vintage racing, but they're very cautious. Where I know every dirty trick you can pull.
You invented a lot of them.
And yeah.
They're called Nicholases.
And so it's easy for me to, kind of snooker them a little bit.
I think they just call them Daves. Nicholas is too long. He pulled a Dave on me.
That's the vintage racing thing's pretty cool.
Well, as you point out, you've been doing this since you were very young, and you know the cars inside and out. You know the technology. So when a guy who gets rich, retires, buys a fancy car, he doesn't know the vehicle like you do. So that gives you such an advantage.
Yeah, and current Grand Prix, there's a guy named Ayrton Senna and Michael Schumacher, both among the great race drivers of
Schumacher's
all
like
time.
the highest paid athlete in the world for quite some time.
Yeah, absolutely he was. Yeah. But they were different. They would block you. They would run you off the road. Literally, Senna and Schumacher both have taken guys out. They've just hit to knock them out because they didn't want that guy to finish the race. So people nowadays don't think a thing about blocking. We never blocked. Never. I mean, if you got the better of me, I'll get you next lap. So, if you're going down a straight and the next corner is a right-hand turn, and you want to move over and go down the straight on the right so the guy can't get inside you, there's nothing wrong with that. If you're going to pass me, go around the outside. But you don't go down the left side, and when he tries to pass, you move over and cut him off. But some guys in vintage racing are starting to do that.
Wow.
And at Indy that year, there were the Porsche guys, the 356 Porsche guys, the old bathtub, they had a horrendous crash in a vintage car race. Ooh. I mean, how fast?
You don't want to be crashing those cars.
No, how fast can we go? 125 miles an hour? I mean, the Indy cars are doing 220 miles an hour.
Right, yeah.
So, I mean, in our race, Carl Jordan, a buddy of mine and I, we said, okay, look, this is going to be great, but we're not going to blow our engines up for the rest of the year. We're going to stay at 6,000 RPM. We're not going to go above that. So we would pass and repass and pass and repass. And people didn't know that. It was all staged, right? Because the thing is 2.5 miles around. It's a big track.
Yeah, that's a big track.
And it's wonderful because we go through. It's not banked at all. I mean, I've driven Talladega and those are bankings.
Yeah.
And this is not banked that much. But we had a great time. And then it was a 4-lap race. It was 10-mile race. So about the third lap, geez, Carl's doing 6,200 RPM. Why, you old bastard. So I stay with him. Then he's doing 6,400 RPM, right? So we get to the last lap, and we come around, and it was my turn to go around on the outside. Well, he just kind of moved over a little bit on me. Now, he wasn't going to put me in the wall, but it would have been close. That old, he's a real Southern gentleman. If you looked in the dictionary or encyclopedia, remember those?
Oh, sure.
And saw a Southern gentleman, it'd be a picture of Carl George, like, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. He, yes, ma'am, me. And it was great. But the Porsche guys, they went into that last corner and they wanted to win it. For what? And one guy hit another guy and 4 of them went into the turn 4 wall. They said, that's it.
Yeah, before we run here, there's a growing race car population out here now, growing out in thermal and stuff like that. Have you gotten involved with any of that?
I raced there once. 4 or 5 years ago, they had a vintage car race there. And a guy gave me a car and I raced. I've been there a couple of times. The IndyCar race that's coming up in March, wow. How the hell did they figure that? I mean, that was supposed to be a private enterprise, and now they're bringing arguably the 3rd largest racing series in the world.
Really?
Yeah. Well, you've got Formula One, NASCAR, IndyCar. You can juggle up who's first, second, and third, however you like. That's a great thing.
Yeah.
Naturally, I know somebody, so I got passes. But
Oh, you must not know enough people because you've never invited me.
I did. I'm inviting both of you to be
I will look for it.
You can meet Patrick gets passes. She's Patrick.
I will look for it. Our TV station is going to be very involved in coverage of that, so actually we're getting involved in that project, so it's going to be very cool. Well, in true fashion, much like much of your career, we went through this podcast pretty darn fast.
Didn't break once.
Yeah. I don't even, and even at my age, I don't need to pee, which is really something.
Well, that makes at least one of us. Dave Nicholas, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Fascinating look back at, just some great history in racing, and then the Xterra stuff. That's amazing. Really incredible.
Yeah, there's some stories there about monkeys that tried to do me in, and
Damn it, let's start over.
The jungles of Malaysia?
Well, we'll order you another drink. We'll just hear those stories.
That's true.
Thank you,
I'll
Randy
be back
Florence, my co-host, John McMullen, our producer, the McCallum Theater, our presenting sponsor. I'm Patrick Evans. Thank you so much for listening to Big Conversations, Little Bar. Please be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. We're available on all of your favorite podcast platforms.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Big Conversations, Little Bar. Recorded on location at Skip Paige's Little Bar in Palm Desert, California, and presented by the McCallum Theater. Online at mccallumtheater.org. This program is a production of the Mutual Broadcasting System. All episodes are available from BigConversationsLittleBar.com and most major podcast portals.
Meet your neighbors, fascinating and grand. Each conversation, a wave on the sand. Raise your glass and join the ride, where stories and dreams fully collide. At Big Conversations Little Bar, brought to you by McCallum, our guiding stars. From movies, stage, and TV's delight, join us for a captivating morning, noon, or night. So gather round at Skip's Little Bar, where stories travel from near and far. Big conversations where they unfold, with Patrick and Randy, tales retold.